Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm Mocha Bezirgan and I'm here with Marco Huigenbos. He was recently found guilty by a jury of his peers and I'm here to ask him some questions. First of all, Marco, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mocha.
Thank you for making the time. The very hot topic right now is Premier Danielle Smith's comments about the guilty verdict. What do you make of that? She says you can't block critical infrastructure.
Well, when it comes to blocking critical infrastructure, I couldn't agree with, in relation to ideology, I couldn't agree with her more. It's a very dangerous precedence when ideological driven groups, special interest groups, block infrastructure in the country or in the province. But that was not what Coutts was. Let's stop for a second and back up to the times we were living in. Coutts was Albertans of all, if we want to talk about ideology, it was Albertans from all ideological backgrounds that stood up against government tyranny. I might have mentioned something earlier or last week on social media where I'd said government lost their minds, and I might have used choice words in that respect. So for the Premier to comment specifically in answer to a question about the Coutts trio convictions, to deflect to a provincial act, the Defence Act, put in place by Kenny, which has, I believe, only been used once in relation to Arthur Plowski's prosecution. I don't believe there's ever been anybody found guilty under the Act. The Act is not a criminal code offense. It's a piece of legislation the province put in after the railroad blockades. So to deflect and to use that act as I believe that's what her purpose was, as a comparable to our criminal proceedings, which stemmed out of an event which was not ideological driven by ideology. It was driven because of anger and frustration toward a government gone rogue. And a lot of people might want to forget about Coutts, but Coutts, it will live on. It'll be in the history books, for better or worse, for what it was and what it resulted in. It resulted in government having to stand down in a very significant manner, in a very rapid manner, and for worse, based on the political prosecutions that have stemmed out of the blockade. And Danielle Smith will be seen as a significant disappointment in relation to those prosecutions.
I was just about to ask that, actually. Many people comment on the interview done by True North with Danielle Smith. They expressed disappointment in her response about the vaccines and now her stance on the Coutts protest. I'm sure your friends are also disappointed in her stance.
Correct.
Some people only voted for her because she was opposing the vaccine mandates.
Well, let's go back to the spring of 2022 leading into the fall of 2022. Kenny's leadership review was in full swing, and the anger that was able to become it was utilized in an effective manner leading out of the blockade was harnessed in a strategic manner, is how I see this now, by the Danielle Smith team. Was this something she always aligned with? I actually believe it was. I believe she aligned with this. I believe she did an interview with the Western Standard at the time, or somebody else, where she said Coutts must win. Does that mean she agreed with all the tactics and all the details of the blockade? Nobody did. There was things that I didn't agree with, and I participated in the blockade. But she realized it was necessary to challenge government and to hold government accountable at that time. And Coutts must win because the mandates needed to be dropped. Coutts did win. That is the anger that she ran her campaign on. She got in front of that parade, that anger parade. in relation to vaccine mandates, in relation to health restrictions, emergency measures, you name it. To have her now a year and some into her premiership and almost a year after the general election, where she is in control as premier, in control of cabinet, in control of direction of ministries, and when I say in control, she's part of a party, and she's the leader of that party, and she has to operate in a strategic manner. But to come out in this manner and deflect, and to answer a question that would have been better off answered with no comment at all, versus the answer she did give, to compare us to some ideological driven organization, such as what we're seeing across the country in relation to the Hamas protests or things like that. I'm not here to put out an opinion in relation to those events, but that's not what Coutts was. Coutts was white-collar, blue-collar Albertans who stood up for their kids, for their families, for their neighbors, to challenge a government that had lost their frickin' minds. And I'll touch base on the second part of your question in relation to the vaccine mandates and the vaccines. It's disgusting that the COVID regime lives on with all the information that's still out there. It's weak that Premier Smith, and I've supported her. I've supported Danielle Smith. I've been involved in her leadership race. I've helped out on numerous campaigns. It's not about me, but to say I'm an individual who's just angry and who's spouting off, I was, and to some degree am, a significant supporter of the United Conservative cause. The cause.
You've always been a measured man in your criticisms to Danielle Smith or to UCP, and to see now them not backing you up or not even messaging you something after the guilty verdict when you're facing up to 10 years in prison, I don't know how much that feels.
Well, again, I've been measured. I've been a moderate. I can be diplomatic. I am diplomatic. I understand the three branches of government. I understand them very well. The legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch of government. I also understand how they operate and the fact that the judiciary should not be influenced by the other branches of government. Should not. It does happen. And unfortunately, it only happens one way. I remember a specific conversation with the Premier shortly before last year's general election. And it was a very, very simple conversation. How are you doing? How's your family? Right? I'd gotten to know her on a friendly level through the campaign and through the campaigns. So I was not a stranger to her, and likewise. And if anything, at that time, I felt there was respect and appreciation for what I had done. But I was always the guy that hung in the background. But I mean, this conversation was very short-lived, and it was very short, and there was individuals around, and I didn't want to take up much of her time. But how are you doing? How's your family? And we talked about how the three branches of government operate. And my comment to her was, and let me be very clear, there was no way an impression that she was trying to do something on behalf of our prosecution, any of that. I wouldn't have tolerated that. I didn't want the precedents to be set. Even if my charges are political in nature, the arm that got me into this is not the arm that can get me out. Because it sets, two wrongs don't make a right. And some people may disagree with me, but that's my view. And I had said, Premier, I'm thankful that you're not able to do anything because the next Premier will do it for the wrong reasons. You can't block blocking a piece of critical infrastructure under the law is wrong. The legality of the law, the guardrails of the law are very simple. Those guardrails are very narrow. Coutts was a once-in-a-lifetime event that, for whether you agree with it or not, that was necessary to bring government to heel. we had restrictions on outdoor funerals, burials. A capacity of 10 people could attend an outdoor burial. Seniors were dying alone. Kids were being abused with experimental vaccinations and masking and such. I remember parents where their 11-year-old boy who was in sports was traumatized and was going through a mental health crisis because he had to get vaccinated before to continue in sports as a 12-year-old. And that was because of government and because the world had participated in groupthink and had respectively lost their minds. That was such a huge issue in this province. People had to stand up. And yes, blocking a highway is illegal, but what the government has done was also illegal. I will take the accountability that I have to participate in. I will wear it with my head held high, and I will understand it. But where is the accountability for those who forced us to go to that border? Where is the accountability for that? And that is why this is so unfortunate, to be in a place and to now hear from a premier who ran on that support. She ran on the support, the anti-COVID support, the anti-Kenny support, the anti-government tyranny support, and to now have her weakened and weak in the face of AHS and other organizations. Yes, it takes a backbone. She has it. I believe it is a strategic decision. It's not a failure of the individual. This is a strategic decision by Danielle Smith to compromise, and that I can't support.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your time. Thank you for giving me the interview. You have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Mocha.